Hello everyone, and welcome to the RV Inspection and Care channel. I'm Dwayne and I'm a certified RV inspector. And today we're going to be talking about some big, really important lessons that I learned recently when my tow bar broke while I was towing my CRV down the highway. You know, I've been thinking about this for a while. What are the risks about towing vehicles, and how can I mitigate some of those risks, minimize them and so on. And so before we left on this trip, and this trip's about a 3,000-mile trip across country, I decided, I'm going to make a couple of purchases that I think might help me safety-wise as I'm going down the road and towing. Boy, am I glad I did, because sure enough, in Fort Worth, Texas, at the convergence of two major highways, my tow bar broke. So we had to get off the highway, and I mean move over a couple of lanes of traffic, and you know how that is with a big rig, get into an area where it was safe enough to stop, and then with cars whizzing by at 75 and 80 miles an hour, try to solve the issue. And I've got to apologize to you, because I know these, I see the YouTube channels that when something like this happens, well, the first thing that comes to their mind is to grab that video camera and go out there and video the whole mess, and then show it to you. Well, I apologize, because that was the last thing on my mind at that point. I got to tell you, in situations like that, I feel a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. The only thing that was on my mind is get this resolved safely and get back on the road in a safe manner. So I don't have any video to show you of what actually happened. But as a first-person account, I can tell you it was stressful. It was really challenging. And I don't want to have to go through that again anytime soon. But, the point is that what happened there, that break of the tow bar, set a series of things in motion that really taught me some very good lessons and made me glad I had done what I did before we left on this trip. So let's start with lesson number one, and that is this: make sure that you have a really good functioning rear camera for whatever you're towing. Now, I had a rear camera in my 2004 Newmar Country Star, but when a rig is that old, there's all kinds of little issues that sort of develop with various components. And sure enough, in the last year or so, I started having trouble with that camera. It would just sort of go out on me all of a sudden without warning. It could be out for a minute, it could be out for an hour, and I wouldn't even know what's going on behind me as a result of that. So when I realized that was the case, well, I got somebody working on it. I replaced the camera first of all, and that didn't solve the problem. Had some other people try to diagnose it, and sure enough, as soon as they look at it, it's not doing the problem at all. But I got to thinking about it, and I kind of figured, well, this really sounds like it's an electrical problem, like a short somewhere in the system, in the wiring. And for those of you who know much about electrical and shorts, you could spend forever looking for this thing and still not find it, but it could become very expensive. So I finally decided, well, I've had enough of this. I'm just going to buy a new wireless camera, rear camera, and install it. But that has its set of issues, because if you go on Amazon and start reading about rear view cameras for RVs, well, there's a lot of folks that complain that, they don't work very well for long RVs. I mean, for short ones, they're okay. But when you get up to, 40 feet, 35, 40 feet and beyond, a lot were complaining that they just didn't have enough signal. So I just kept looking, finally found a rear view camera system that actually said it was designed for longer rigs. And I got it, and am I glad I did, because that is how I knew that the tow bar had broke. You know, I always kind of make a sweep of my gauges that's in front of me and my mirrors as I'm going down the road, you know, from time to time, regularly, to make sure that everything's where it should be. So there I was sweeping my gauges, looked up into my rear view camera, and there's my car back there going like this as I'm going down the highway. It should be going like this behind me, but it's not. It's doing this number. So I knew right away that there was a problem with the tow bar. That meant I had to get over and get this resolved before it got worse. And sure enough, see, that really saved me, because if I hadn't gotten over then there's a very good chance that that second bar would have broken under the pressure. That could have been really bad. So my first lesson is always make sure that you have a really good functioning rear view camera so that you know what's going on back there when you're towing. Now let's get to lesson number 2, and that is always make sure that you have a good functioning tire pressure monitoring system that has sensors not only for your tow vehicle that's towing, but also for the vehicle behind it. Now, you know, I made a video a while back, and it's this video right here, where I covered how to manually make sure your tire pressures are where they are before you leave out on a trip, and it's very good advice and so on. But, you know, I got to thinking more after that video was made, and I thought, that's great for my motorhome, but what about the vehicle behind? I might be able to tell something's going wrong on the motorhome as I'm going down the road, but I will never know if the tires are really having a problem in the towed vehicle, you see. So I started thinking about that, and I said, you know, I've heard some stories that aren't really very encouraging. Things about where, you know, people are towing a car down the highway and they have a flat, and as a result, they never feel it up front, but the flat tire just gets worse and worse, and then the rubber wears away, and then you have the rim right on pavement. And then, you know, when it's on pavement, it's very easy to start throwing sparks. I've even heard situations where this has gone on for many, many miles, and the sparks caused a fire in the towed vehicle. So, you know, all of this was on my mind. And I decided then to not only install a TPMS unit, but make sure there were enough sensors for that towed vehicle as well. Well, am I glad I did, my friends? Because, remember I said, everything, this whole situation had one thing go wrong and then other things developed from it. Well, as you know, the tow bar broke. It means I got to get a new one. So I ordered one in. When I got it in, I noticed it was really stiff from the factory. I mean, so stiff that I could barely pull the two bars apart, you know? But I thought to myself, well, it's coming from the factory that way. Maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe it'll loosen up pretty quickly and things along that line. So I went ahead and installed it, hooked the towed vehicle up, and down the highway I went. Well, it wasn't long going down the highway before my TPMS unit starts alarming. And it's telling me that both front tires have reached the danger zone for tire temperature. You know, the good TPMS units don't just tell you about your tire pressure, they tell you what the temperature is in each tire. Well, at 200 degrees or so inside a tire, that's about the point where they start coming apart. So the TPMS unit warns you at 165. Both front tires were at 165 degrees inside the tire. Well, of course, I pull right over and we unhook, and then we caravaned on to the next stop. I got thinking about it, and I thought, you know, it can't be the tires, because you wouldn't have two of them doing it at the same time. And I knew that tow bar was pretty stiff. So I loosened up that tow bar a little bit, adjusted it some, got it where it was much more pliable. And since then, I haven't had any problem. But my point is this. You see, if I hadn't had those sensors on my tires in the towed vehicle, I would never have known what was going on as I was towing the car down the highway. I probably would have been blissfully driving along while the tire temperature just rose and rose, and eventually I could have had 2 blowouts, not just one, and you can imagine how difficult that could have been. So, my point, my friends, is this. Both things that I addressed before I left on the trip actually came into good use on this trip, and I want to share that with you. Let's review. Number 1, make sure you have a good functioning rear view camera system. And that's really true of whether you're flat towing, whether you're tow dolly towing, whether you have a towable RV behind you or whatever. Make sure you can see what's going on back there. But then take that one step further and have a tire pressure monitoring system that includes not only the tow vehicle, but what's being towed back there too, so you know what's going on in those tires behind you. That's where the rubber literally meets the road. Now, the good news in all of this is this. I'm about 2,500 miles into my cross-country trip thus far. And so far, both of these systems, the rear view camera and the TPMS system, have functioned beautifully. And I can say that I have a lot more peace of mind knowing that I have this information readily available to me about what's going on behind, not only in the vehicle I'm driving, but in the one I'm towing as well. So I'm going to put links to both of those systems that I bought down in the description below, and you can look at them. If you think it's something that might work for you, then great, because both of these systems have worked great for me. Whatever you decide to do is fine, but my friends, please be sure that you take my advice, get that rear camera installed and make sure it's working, and get that TPMS system and put sensors on your towed vehicle as well. Well, that's it for now. Have safe and happy travels, my friends. Until next time.